Let's see. I'd like to welcome you to today's program. We're really happy you can join us. I'm Ann Boucher, the Education Coordinator for the Friends of Pheasant Branch Conservancy. We're excited to have Randy Hoffman here to talk about his book, When Things Happen, and to give us some tips on phenology in our area. Before we get going, I just have a little bit of a few reminders for you. Please follow the basic Zoom etiquette that we're all comfortable with. We're on Zoom meeting, not Zoom webinar, so we can potentially all see each other, but that can get distracting. So I ask you to please turn off your camera and stay muted to reduce interruptions and distractions. During the presentation, I recommend that you set your Zoom window to speaker view. That way you should have the slides in part of your screen and only the person speaking in the other part. And I just found a nifty little trick. If you move your cursor over to the division to the edge of where the slides are showing, you can shift it left. You can shift that boundary left to right, and it'll make the speaker bigger or smaller depending on how much room you give for the slides. We will be taking comments and questions at the end of the presentation, and I ask that you please put them into the chat area. I'll watch for them and pose them to Randy at the end of his presentation. And I need to inform you that this presentation is being recorded, and I will be posting the recording on our YouTube channel next week. And finally, at the end of this, we really are looking for and would welcome feedback on our Conservancy Day programs. So I will put a link for that into the chat. Actually, right now in the chat are links for our feedback form, for a Seed the Need campaign that I'm going to talk about later or in a minute, and how to join the Friends if you want to become a member, and the link to our YouTube channel. So to move on, I'd like to take a moment to tell you about the Friends. The Friends are celebrating their 25th anniversary +1 this year. 25 was last year. We want to celebrate with everyone in the community. You're invited to our bash on August 1st at the Capitol Brewery to celebrate with good cheer and live music by musicians from our Tunes on Tuesday players that have been coming out over the last few years, and Harmonious Whale. If you're not a member of the Friends, we urge you to join or make a donation. Every dollar is needed and put to good use. Among other things, we advocate for the watershed, conduct education and outreach activities, and we have a major role in restoration of the land in the Conservancy. That link is in the chat section. We are currently in the second year of an ambitious Seed the Need campaign to raise $100,000 to create a platinum prairie in the new parcel, the acre addition to the Conservancy. A platinum prairie is comprised of more than 100 native plant species. It will become a place that is a source of seeds for prairies all over Dane County. So please consider giving to the Seed the Need campaign or joining the Friends. We'd love to have you. The Friends have been sponsoring these monthly presentations for more than 10 years. Conservancy Days are held the third Thursday of the month from January to November. We have been virtual since last September. You can see recordings of all of those Conservancy Days on our YouTube channel. This summer, we're so excited, we'll be holding the next 3 Conservancy Days outdoors in the Conservancy. It's going to be wonderful to be able to be outside and together. You can see here what our next upcoming topics are. You can get more information about these on our webpage or Facebook page, or you can contact me, and I'd be happy to give you any information you're looking for. So with all that, I'm going to stop sharing, and I'd like to turn this over to Randy. And Randy, I'm going to leave it to you to introduce yourself. You can start talking any.
Yes, I'm trying to get my sharing the screen up. Does everybody see the screen up here now?
Yes, it looks great.
But I'm not being able to forward or.
You might want to just, I think if you use your cursor to click on the screen the first time, then it will start to advance.
Okay, very good. I am very new at this Zoom, so this is my second Zoom. So even for an old guy, I guess I can still learn things. I want to thank the friends for inviting me, and I'm here to talk about my new book, When Things Happen. I'm going to go through several things about how I created the book and hopefully share some phenology and places to look for things happening in nature coming. I wrote this book for anyone with a reason to get outdoors. Persons that just absolutely must get outdoors, must be in nature no matter what. People that use nature, like hunters and anglers and people out working in their woodlots. Recreationists, people that are out mountain biking, cross-country skiing, or even botanizing. Anybody that gets out into nature, I try to include their interest in this book. Anyone with a spiritual connection. Some people have great connections with nature. I once knew an artist over in the North Cattle Moraine that said he only got his inspiration sitting under one specific oak tree. Those, of course, that study nature, researchers, environmental students, and just for those people seeking solitude in nature. For any writer, you start asking questions, and everybody approaches nature differently. And so I started asking the question just as a journalist would about what's available for the nature enthusiast. Well, the 6 basic questions that journalists ask are on the screen. And of course, the who is us. And I'm going to go through these other questions one at a time, leading to the final when. And you can see, hopefully you'll see as I go through there that there's plenty of information available except for that when part. The what, there's just tons of books out there on how to identify what's in nature. You got bird books, reptile books, flower books, virtually everything except for a field guide to bacteria is available for the nature enthusiast. The where part, there's also a ton of books on where to go and visit and see aspects of nature. There's books on hiking and mountain bike trails and scenic treasures that are out and available to the public. There's even several books on how to enjoy nature. There's biological books, ecological guides that go through the habitats. There's guides to wholeness and creativity, inspired learning in nature, and how to share nature with children. Those books are all available to give more insight and in-depth experience into nature. Now, the why part is, I'm going to take quite a bit of time going through the why part, because this, to me, is the most important part of the talk tonight. Our relationship and our values with nature have changed over the course of time. Anywhere from the first books that espoused the values of nature, like Walden and going to a little pond just outside of Boston, through John Muir, who pontificated about nature's cathedrals out in the western part of the United States, to Leopold's lyric prose espousing the philosophical and ethical values of the man-nature relationship. More recently, some other authors have taken a more in-depth look at why nature is important for the human spirit. Books by Richard Louv ask and answers questions. What would our lives be like if we spent as much time in nature as we do in our technological world? And in the center, The Nature Fix by Florence Williams investigates the science behind the positive effects on the brain and health in general about nature experiences. I'll probe a little deeper into these findings. Let's look at what experts say about what is the quality of life. These are questionnaires that have worldwide audiences. Material living conditions is a very important part of the quality of life. And it goes beyond what you own. It goes to community. What kind of community do you have? And it goes to things that are in your community. And a very important recent study that was done just blew my mind, that many people considered having more birdsong in their lives just as important as making more money. Productivity or main activity refers to the importance of doing what you like. People that are in a profession or doing a job that they have a special skill set for seem to be much happier than those that are just out trying to make money. Health is very important. A person that's in chronic pain is not going to say they have as much of a quality of life as those that are pain-free. And that health goes to not only human health, but it covers also biodiversity. Education is very important. Education is the process of transmitting societal culture, knowledge, skills, and values to each generation. The longer the education lasts, the longer this transfer takes place. And so the more you're in tune with how your position in the world fits in with society's positions. Leisure and social activities are very important for a person's sense of well-being. They seem to be happier when they're doing things they like. As long as safety, you need to feel safe in your neighborhoods. Now, the potential effects of these quality of life parameters and visiting nature are profound. Some of the negative effects that we're seeing are preteens have the highest rates of media use, were less developed emotionally and socially. There's been quite a bit of study done on this, and there seems to be some strong correlations. The average teen texts 3,000 times per month. They're spending a lot of time with technology. And just the regular average person looks at their phones 150 times a day. Some studies that were done recently just showed pictures of people with various scenes being in nature or in other circumstances. And these were MRI images of where the blood is flowing when the subjects were shown nature scenes. And they found out that more blood was flowing to the insula, anterior cingulate areas of the brain, which is associated with pleasure, empathy, and unconstrained thinking. Whereas if those subjects were shown urban scenes, more blood was flowing to the amygdala, which is the center for fear and anxiety. So let's look at this brain network a little more closely here. The average brain processes 120 bits of information per second. So what is that in relative terms? Well, a simple conversation that we're having right now, even though it's only one way with just me talking, you are listening to the conversation, and that uses about 60 bits of information. So those people that say they're experts at multitasking are very much confused, because this task switching uses a lot of oxygenated glucose that we need for cognitive and physical performance. And the brain's main job is filtering, because there is such a huge amount of information that comes in. We're not aware of all of those little things in our environment cognitively that are happening around us. We're not focusing on skin temperature, or whether some thing is making us sneeze. We just automatically do that. So the brain doesn't have to think about those things, because they're filtered out of that cognitive process. So therefore, direct attention is a very limited resource. So what does this have to do with nature? Well, look at our world right now. We've got just tons of things bombarding us. We've got emails, alerts, sounds, interruptions, just noise all over the place. So here's a little quote from Richard Louv: creative genius is not the accumulation of knowledge, it's the ability to see patterns in the universe, hidden links between what is and what could be. And I've got a picture of Albert Einstein here, and a lot of people don't know that Albert Einstein, considered one of the true geniuses of our time, spent nearly every day walking in the woods. So how do we resolve these conflicts of technology and all of the bombardment that our brain is receiving? Well, human brains have always been sensitive to stress. So just saying we need to eliminate stress is not an answer, because there's always going to be stress. So the key is not how to eliminate stress, but how to recover from stress. Studies have shown there's a 50% improvement in creativity with just a few days in nature. They've also found a significant reduction in attention deficit disorder. Nature simultaneously calms and focuses the brain. And so what are the benefits that we have about getting into nature in trying to balance that tech world with our natural world? Many studies have found that there's an increase in creativity and problem solving by just spending a few hours in nature. Also, we have improved cognitive abilities, improved academic performance, even physical health. You're out walking, you're doing activity out in the natural world. This one was a little surprising to me, that studies have shown that eyesight is improved when we're in nature. And even other benefits, like this is a shot from a hospital in Singapore that shows that people that are in hospitals that have a view of nature recover much faster than those that are looking at brick walls. So that nature fix is very important. So what's the proposal by those that have studied this natural phenomenon out there about nature and why it's so important for our lives, for our complete physical and mental health? Well, they've come up with a nature connection pyramid. Now I'll go through this a little so you have a little better idea of what's going on here. It's very similar to the food pyramids or some exercise pyramids about how often you should be doing those things for a healthy life. Well, every day you should get outside and do something. On a weekly basis, you should at least spend a couple of hours getting out, doing things like a nature walk, bird watching, collecting rocks, looking at plants, just something for a couple of hours that you're getting away from walls and technology. On a monthly basis, you should be trying to spend at least one weekend per month out in the natural world. It's really important to get away from the sights and sounds of urban environments or technological environments. And one of the real reasons is that our entire evolution has brought us to the point of we are outside of what we normally did. That walking in nature was the normal pace that we observed the natural world. We didn't observe it from cars and airplanes and flashing neon lights. And then on a yearly basis, you should try and go out and find someplace wild, find some kind of wilderness, challenge yourself, get out there and get out of the normal. It is great for brain health to do this. Now I'm going to go through these and show you some of the areas close here at hand where you can get out and explore nature. Well, these first slides are all from Pheasant Branch. You can see the spring, and here's the overlook on the spring in the center on the bottom. And I just love going to this overlook. It's watching those bubbling springs come up is just mesmerizing, and it just basically puts you in a whole new world. And the babble of the brooks running through the Conservancy Park is also extremely soothing. Close at hand, we have some places where you could get out and do monthly experiences. We have Devil's Lake State Park that is close at hand. Get up, you can go up there camping or go up for day visits, although it does get to be a little hectic. And the photo in the center on the bottom is from Baxter's Hollow, which is not that far away from Devil's Lake. A road goes up into that hollow, and you can find your way up in there and find some of that solitude that's not found at Devil's Lake. Although there are many trails at Devil's Lake, you get away from the trails where the rocks are, you can find a lot of solitude. And the top one on the right is a photo of Yellowstone Lake State Park. Not a lot of people visit Yellowstone Lake. There's plenty of trails down there, and you can get quite an experience of solitude. Now, those areas that I talked about that the experts say you should be going to on a yearly basis out planning vacations, well, you don't have to go to Yellowstone, or you don't have to travel to the Amazon. We have plenty of places right here in Wisconsin. And I'm going to start with the top on the left and go clockwise around. There's places that this is a shot from Vilas County with the numerous lakes, canoe trails through lakes, chains of lakes, many natural areas, hiking trails that you can get away from it all. You can spend an entire vacation there and see very few people if you want to. If you want to see people, you can go to downtown Minocqua. The center one on top is the Lower Wisconsin River. It's 92 miles of pretty wild country. You can paddle or float down the river, and in a lot of places not see much human activity, with the exception of a few bridge and railroad crossings. On the right is a photo of from Rush Creek State Natural Area along the Mississippi River. There's a series of natural areas and bluff prairies along the Mississippi where you can go out there and be virtually alone. It's especially exciting to get out there in the fall where you can see things like bald eagles flying below you. On the bottom, on the right is another photo from northern Wisconsin. This is up in the Chequamegon-Nicolet. There are several wilderness areas in the Chequamegon-Nicolet that are just available to get out and experience that wild feel. And the last one is not that far away. It's actually in Adams County. This is a photo of the Quincy Bluff Natural Area. It's about 10,000 acres of really wild land close at hand. Well, with all of that, let's get down to the book, the when part of the book. There's a lot of information on those other questions, but when you look at it, there's not a whole lot of things that are out there that are talking about when the things are happening. So for very busy families that need to get out and experience nature, well, it helps to know when to do things. If you have a child that's interested in trilliums, well, you got about 2 more days to go out and look for them because they're just about done for the year. You're not going to do much finding of trilliums later in the year. It's got to be right around Mother's Day. So anybody with an interest in nature can utilize this book to help plan when to get out into the natural world. Now, phenology is what the book is all about. Phenology is the relationship between climate and the occurrence of biological events. Now, most phenology studies focus on when things first or last happen, when the first lilac blooms, when the first robin shows up in the spring. But as I mentioned before, because of the busy nature of humans in this world in the 21st century, if you go out and try and find something that is happening for the first time, you may be very disappointed because you might not find it. But if you're going out when something is peaking, then you're going to have a much better chance of finding those out in the nature. So that's what I did with this book. When things happen, focuses on when those peaks occur. The overview of the book, and I've told several people this, they said, well, how did you come about writing this book? And I said, well, it was 60 years of being out in the field and 2 years to write it. So I went out, and ever since I've been a little kid, I've taken a journal with me out into nature to write down what I see and hear. In doing that, I found out that things tended to fall out into patterns, like 10-day patterns is when peaks started to pop up. So I divided the book into 36 chapters to capture those peak events. And then in those chapters, I've got a primary article that focuses on some aspect of nature that occurs during that time period. For instance, right now in approaching late May, the primary thing that's happening right now is warbler migration. So it's getting towards the end of warbler migration. So this time period in the book focuses on that migration. Then each chapter has several brief articles about other events or species interactions, also applicable to this time frame. For instance, right now, in the book, it says this is a good time to go out and look for gray rat snakes. Now, gray rat snakes are only found in the southern, about 3 tiers of counties, a little farther north along the Mississippi. But most of the year, they are arboreal, and they're very difficult to find up in the trees. But at this time of the year, with leaf off and leaves gradually coming on, you can find some of them in in the trees in the southern part of the state. And finally, there's tidbits of information about the time period. And this one is really important to spend a little time on because there's over 100,000 known species in Wisconsin. Now, if someone were to write a phenology for every single one of those species, it would take about 10 lifetimes worth of work. It wouldn't fit into a normal book. It would be encyclopedic volumes that would need to cover all of the species. So I present some interesting things that are happening during that time period that just are there to try and stimulate further exploration, to pique an interest, especially in youth that want to get out and enjoy the natural world. So I'm going to go through some things that are happening right now. Like I mentioned, right in the center is warbler migration, and it's getting towards the end. And so you're getting some of the later warblers. This is one of my favorites. This is a bay-breasted warbler, nest up in Canada. It comes through in mid-May. I saw a couple today, and probably in another week, they will be totally done with their migration. On the bottom right is a green frog. And with the warm weather, you can start hearing their banjo type calls out in nature. So this is a good time period to get out and try and find green frogs. And then on the left on the bottom is a sand violet. Most violets are done. Most of the wood violets have already bloomed, but some of the violets that are out in barrens areas or drier prairie areas are still blooming at this time of the year. Well, coming up soon, things are happening out in the natural world. I'm going to go through a few examples to maybe pique your interest. This is called moccasin flower or pink lady slipper. It's found just a little north of here in the drier, sandier woods, especially if there's pines. But usually about the first week of June is when these guys are blooming. A little to the southwest of here, we have the Great Wisconsin Desert, just north of Spring Green. The Nature Conservancy has a preserve down there. And this is the flower of the opuntia, the prickly pear cactus that is prolific at their Spring Green preserve. Usually about the 1st of June is when they're blooming on the preserve. If you have some grasslands, I'm the volunteer steward at the Hauser Road Prairie for the Nature Conservancy. And we have several bobolinks that nest out at Hauser Road. And if you have an opportunity to be out in a grassland where the bobolinks are found, just take some time and just sit down and watch them fly around. They have one of the most beautiful songs in the world, and you can just get enthralled by their flight songs. If you've got some wetlands around you in mid-July into the first part of August, you can look for this guy. This is the beautiful Baltimore checker spot butterfly. It's usually found in some fairly high quality wet meadows, wet prairies, sedge meadows. The numbers are decreasing, but if you have a nice spot, you can go out there with one of the easier checker spots to identify. If you would get out to Spring Green or other areas along the lower Wisconsin, keep an eye out for this little guy. This is the four-spotted and the name is escaping me right now. Four-spotted antlion. I don't know why. It must be because I'm in my 70s. I had a little mental block there. The antlions dig these little holes, and this monster at the bottom will be down in those holes with those pinchers out, waiting for some insect to get in there. And it will dig rapidly until the insect gets to the bottom of the hole, and then those pinchers come into use. But in midsummer, you might see this dainty little critter on the right, which is the adult of the antlion, flying around, and these little wispy gossamer wings. Several species of June bugs are found in Wisconsin. They could crash into your outdoor lights or your windshields on cars and make a thud. Some pop out in May. I don't know why they're not called May beetles, but they're called June beetles for some reason. So you could keep your eye out for these. Also starting in June, going into July, I believe there's 22 species of fireflies that have been identified in Wisconsin. And those fireflies, each species has a different glow pattern, so they can identify which species are what by either how rapidly they glow, how bright they glow, the interval between flashes is great for species identification. There's also a couple of predatory fireflies that mimic the glows, and so when the species that are attracted, then the predatory ones latch onto them and have lunch. Midsummer, keep your eye out for dragonflies. There's some real common ones that are relatively easy to identify. The one on the left on top is the chalk-fronted corporal. And this species actually can get into some drier sites. It's not specifically found in really wet areas, although it's more common there. You do get in some of the wet meadows, the widow skimmer on the right on the top is a relatively easy dragonfly to identify. And then if you have some nice clear flowing streams, especially you get a little farther west in the coulee area, keep an eye out for this little guy called the ruby spot. For those that are really super adventurous and want to do bizarre things, you can actually listen for fish. This is a freshwater drum, sometimes called the sheep's head. In the first part of June, they will make drumming sounds underwater, and that's part of their mating display. And if you sit quietly by streams with or lakes with sheep's head in them, or freshwater drum, you can actually hear them drumming. We've got something in the state now that we haven't had for a long time, and that's the opportunity to hear elk bugling with the reintroduction program that the DNR has done, both in the Black River Falls area and up in Ashland County by Clam Lake. We have enough elk in the state now that you can plan trips at the end of September or the first week or so of October to go out and just listen for elk bugling. It's a sound that hasn't been heard in Wisconsin for a long time, but it's now back. And finally, this is the last slide. This is a time lapse of the Perseid meteor showers that occur in mid-August. And that's part of the book too, is that it's just not all biology. There's things like phases of the moon, when meteor showers occur. And what I want to leave everybody with is several years ago, my wife and I and our two kids were on a camping trip, and we were in a very secluded campground. We were out in a little meadow, and we observed the Perseid meteor showers just by lying on the ground looking up at the sky in August. And it was amazing to both my wife and I how intelligent our children were, how curious they were. And they were having conversations that we had never expected them to talk about. And we just looked at each other and we were just in awe. And we attribute that a lot to being out in nature and having nature provide that catalyst for great thinking. And with that, I guess I'll open it up for any questions that anyone has.
Randy, you can stop sharing your screen.
Okay,
And
stop. Stop share, there it is. Okay.
and I will start my video. That was fascinating. This is so interesting. You've made phenology accessible to anybody.
Thank you.
And for me, I'm from the East Coast, you don't hear about phenology, but you come here and we're in Aldo Leopold land and you hear about it all the time. But now to not feel the pressure of finding the first thing or the last thing, but to go and look and see what's happening at that time, like that's the best time to go see it, is really a great concept.
Yeah.
So I hope this book goes far and wide, because it's super fun. So whenever you're taking a walk, you can open your book up and go, what might I see?
And you don't have to read it cover to cover. You can read a few pages and for that time period, and then you're all set.
Yeah. Oh, it is so neat. Let's see if we've got any questions from folks. No questions. So, I don't know. So remember, type your questions into the chat if you have a question, and or a comment, something you want to tell Randy, I can read it to him. But so it took you, I think it's really neat that you also used your own data that you've been collecting for, you said 60 years. That's great. So were you, did you grow up in Wisconsin?
Oh yes, I was raised on a dairy farm west of Eau Claire. Came down here to college, met my wife, and stayed. I lived in Middleton for several years, and then I moved to Waunakee.
Great. So it's local data. That it's what's in your book is going to be what we're all going to see. We're really lucky.
It's a little bit beyond local data, because my career, I was the ecologist for the State Natural Areas Program, so I had statewide responsibility. So I had to be everywhere from the Apostle Islands to Shiwaukee Prairie in Kenosha County, to Door County, to places along the Mississippi River. So every time I was out in nature, I always carry a journal with me and write down what I see, what I hear, anything that I can identify. Now, some of the things in the book I'm not an expert on, like some of the beetles, and I used other resources, but a lot of it is from my own data.
That's great. Okay, now we've got some questions popping up. Let's see. Well, thanks for clarifying that for me. That's good. So the question is the book set up chronologically or by geographic area for the state of Wisconsin?
It's
and then chronologically for each area?
It's set up because things are happening, especially during migrations. Things are happening sooner in southern Wisconsin than they do in northern Wisconsin. So I tried to balance that, but it's not set up geographically. It covers the whole state, and so it's a chronological thing. So there'll be an article for January 1st to the 10th, things that are happening then. And the main article during that time frame is it's really a good time to go out and learn your mammal tracks. If you want to see flowers, it's a pretty difficult time to do that in January. Whereas late April, it's a good time to get out and try and find the spring ephemerals and go out and find them.
Cool. Here's another question. Can you speak a bit about your journaling over the years and the impact of climate change?
I can. I gave a presentation last night, the same one, with it was a little more geared to the Stevens Point area, but the journaling over the years and the climate change part, it's a little obscure because of people collecting data on when things first happen, and especially early spring stuff where you can find something like the first record for a Cape May warbler is the end of March, but a vast majority of them don't show up until May 5th. So it's a little difficult, but what I did was I focused on things that I found out by being the Christmas bird count coordinator, and most people just were amazed at the changes over the course of time. And I had all the data in my hand, and most people don't realize that in 1937 was the first nesting of cardinals in Wisconsin.
Wow.
Cardinals are all over the state now. Red-bellied woodpeckers were very scarce in southern Wisconsin in the 1940s. Now they're found all the way to Ashland. And more recently, and my son-in-law just found one in his backyard, is the bird tufted titmouse, which is expanding greatly in the past 5 or 6 years. And now whether that has things to do, phenologically with climate change, it might not, but it might have a lot to do with climate change in the winter season, where the winters are warmer, allowing those things to survive in the wintertime.
Wow. Okay. It's the current state of affairs.
Yeah.
Somebody is asking how your journaling of phenology compares to Aldo and Nina Leopold's observations. Have you made that comparison?
I have not made that comparison because I think they looked at those early and late arrival dates more so than I was focusing on the peak dates. I just read on my little side thing here a thank you from Stuart Utley, and Stu and I worked together a long time ago. We had a great time. So thanks so much for the comments, Stu. The observations, at some point in time, I've got so many journals that maybe after I'm gone, someone can go through them and do that comparison, but I haven't done it.
Oh, somebody's asking, they're interested in purchasing your book. Do you have a preference where people purchase it from?
Well, I don't have a preference because there's only one location you can buy it from. There was some complications with, my first book was with UW Press, and I had some complications with some press outlets. So I went by the self-publishing route. And that was an eye-opening experience in itself to do multiple editings and go through publishing conundrums. So it's only available on Amazon. So you go to Amazon, type in my name or type in When Things Happen. Retails for $19.98 plus whatever shipping there is. If you got Prime, it's probably $19.98.
Gee, I feel like every house in Wisconsin should have this book.
Well, thank you very much.
Everyone's going to take a walk at some point.
And because I did self-publish, and I have to, the only way I can pat myself on the back is to ask people that like the book, like the information that is presented, to tell all their friends. That because when you self-publish, you don't have a marketing group behind you. You have yourself, and it's a little difficult with COVID. I normally would do a lot of in-person presentations, and do a little hawking of the book. But that was virtually impossible over this past year.
I know. When did the book come out?
Late November 2019.
Oh, yeah, that's bad timing. But
Yeah.
but it's great. Yeah. I think somebody wants to ask a question in the group.
That is me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So my name's Kathy Henning. I have lived in the Madison area for 6 years and have been a member of a group of women who meet for breakfast every once a week. And since COVID, we've been doing it by Zoom. Anyway, I got your book, Randy, about a year ago, and I just love it. So every 10 days, I read through what's happening, and I started sharing with the women, and they would say, well, what's our nature report for today? And I would share from your book, but I don't do it anymore because so many of them have bought your book because of that. But anyway, we all just appreciate it greatly. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
It's great because you're connecting people with where they live, which is the whole goal of my work life, is to connect people with the Conservancy, with the place that's in their backyard. You get to know it better, so you care about it more and you enjoy going to visit it. And this book makes that so easy for people to do. It's great. I'm going to share my screen with everybody right now. If we don't have, well, we have a pause in the questions. We have a couple more minutes. We might end early. So we got through questions. I have a poll for all of you who are still on the talk. Once we get to September and the days are getting shorter and colder, I'm wondering how people want to participate in Conservancy days. Do you want to go to Zoom presentations, or would you like it to be in person? So if you could answer my poll here, if I can get back to Zoom. I might have to there's something funky going on. Here we go. I'll send my poll out to you and it'll show up and you can respond anonymously. Okay, and let's go back. Oh, so that's all I've got. We don't need to share anymore. I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. And I really want to thank you for your time, Randy, and for putting this book out in the world. It's something that I think, like Kathy gave testimony to, it can change people's lives and make people much more connected to where they are.
Well, thank you so much.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
Thanks. Wendy Johnson just came on. I don't know if you want to speak directly, Wendy.
Just wanted to say thank you so much. I can't wait to get the book and head into retirement with it.
Retirement's great.
So look at the top of the chat and you can find some of the links all of the links that I told you about. Especially I love your feedback on our Conservancy Day programs. And it's a great place also where you can give me ideas for future presentations. We're starting to program for 2022 shortly. So believe it or not, we try to get this scheduled out 6 to 12 months in advance. So that would be the place to give me your suggestions and consider joining the Friends if you're not a member. And you can go back and review this presentation on YouTube. So that's all I've got for tonight. Thank you, Randy.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. Enjoy the rest of your evening.